Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your Synthos selection of choice and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Hello there. Welcome back to Locutors of Trek. This is Dave.
And I'm Davin.
We are your locutors for the evening. And our topic this week is biology. We're going to look at the people of Star Trek this time, more in terms of their morphology and their body schemes and how they differ from each other. We're really leaning into IDIC this week.
Yeah, this is an episode I've been really looking forward to. Biology is what I deal with for a living as a Boothby type character.
Particularly in its horticultural aspects, but...
And microbiology and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
So, I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. But first off, actually, I think we should clarify a couple things from the last couple episodes.
Sure.
Some of you may have noticed that the Trouble with Trivia segment from last episode may have seemed a little out of place in our culture episode, as it seemed to be very transportation and ship focused.
Luckily for me.
That is because Mr. Scott's chronomatrix, isn't quite up to snuff. I mean, no offense to Mr. Scott, but let's be real here. He's a better trivia host than he is a space engineer.
Well, yeah, and he traded that shifty Lesepian for it. So, you get what you pay for, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, his space-time transporter, very impressive, if it worked properly. Mm-hmm. Like I say, the chronomatrix was off. He came in a week late. He got the right place in space.
That's true. But better than his last attempt. He ended up 6 weeks ago in Colorado, which is definitely not where he intended. Oh, also, one other thing.
Yeah.
That since we did that transportation episode, there's been some very exciting work talked about in the news. The work of a physicist named Eric Lentz, who has described what he calls an entire class of warp drives under general relativity that do not make recourse to exotic materials or negative energy densities, negative energies, in order to create a warp bubble. So warp drive just came about 10 light years closer than it was before, which is pretty exciting.
2160 or something? What is our...
2063,
2063, oh geez.
Yep.
We're really running out of
We
time.
got
But
42 years and a couple of weeks.
cheers to that for sure.
Indeed.
We salute you.
Salute.
Jolan True.
Kapla. So.
And also, the Bolian captain, Dave, struggled
Right. That's right.
slightly at
I never really
remembering
figured out what the name of it was.
was Captain Ricks
Captain
of the
Ricks.
USS Thomas Paine.
Nice. Died for liberty. It's a lovely naming moment there. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Bolians themselves have an interesting biology we may be able to touch on or later in the episode. But for now, where shall we begin?
Well, I guess I do have a list in mind for this evening.
Let's do it.
This list will be top 5
Okay.
characters, groups, or races
Okay.
unseen but talked about
Wow.
that you would like to see
Okay.
in Star Trek. Who shall begin?
I think I began the last list, so you should take the
Okay.
number 5 spot.
Okay, my
number
number
1 this time.
5, maybe my most obvious one. Maybe
Okay.
have a little crossover here, who knows?
We'll see.
And I don't think they've ever been seen, and that's the Iconians.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We hear about them all the time.
And we return to them as a subject quite frequently.
We
They're
do,
kind of a weird galactic
which is
benchmark.
interesting since we've never seen them that I know of.
No. And they only show up really in terms of importance to plot in maybe 2 episodes, right?
Yeah, where the Jem'Hadar found a gateway.
Yeah. And then there's the gateway that the Enterprise found in season 1 or season 2.
Yeah. Who knows if they're still out there? Like, what happened to the Iconians? Who knows? So somebody stumbles upon a group of Iconians. they still have gateways, just nobody knows where they have them. It would just be great to see what they look like and also have some explanation on the gateway technology.
Because I don't think we
and
ever
what
get
happened
any
to them.
kind
Like,
of...
the history of them could be so fascinating.
Yeah, we don't ever get any visual suggestion of their appearance, just
Not that I
demons
know
of
of.
air and darkness.
Yeah.
And then a sense that...
Watch them not look like demons at all.
just very cute
Yeah.
rabbit bunny-looking creatures.
Little binars.
Look at the teeth on it. I've soiled my armor. Anyway, oh yeah, what a great suggestion.
And my number 5, the Iconians.
Nice.
I think there's lots
Nice.
of good stories could be told there.
Oh yeah. So my number 5. My number 5 goes from the epic scale to the relatively minute.
Aha.
I would love to see Felix.
Wow.
Felix, the designer of one of our very good friends, creator of Vic Fontaine.
Well, that's very interesting.
I think we found our first crossover.
Can you join me?
Felix is my number 1 choice.
Oh, wow.
I would love to see Felix.
Oh,
As
man.
well. The man who invented Vic Fontaine.
Indeed.
And such a realistic holographic. He seems more real than the Doctor.
I mean, he seems a virtuoso of holo design. And I'd love to know his background. I don't think we ever get any of that.
No, he's just a buddy of Bashir's.
We don't know if he's a Starfleet buddy. We don't know if he's a civilian
Yeah, I guess we
buddy.
don't. I just always assumed he was in Starfleet, but
yeah, it makes
but
sense.
I don't think
But-
that's indicated at all.
No, I don't think it's necessary at all.
No. But yeah, spoil my number 1, so no big anticipation there, but
Oh, man. Well, you got time to work at a new number 1 if you want to by the time we get to the end.
okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just push it all down and come up with a new number 4. How
All
about
right.
that? That's unprecedented here on Locutors of Trek.
Amazing.
Last minute list switch. But yeah, just to get a more exciting number 1. Felix
All right.
was my number 1, but we'll just
Yeah.
remove poor Felix and let him have a place on your list.
Indeed, he'll fade back into the obscurity of the author as
true.
it becomes...
But what other programs does he come up with for himself? Like, if that's the one he gives away, what
Yeah,
are the
exactly.
programs that he's dealing with?
Yeah. And
Right.
it makes me wonder things like, did Felix have a role in the development of the kind of holograms we see in the first season of Picard, for instance? Or could he have had a role in some of the development of the EMH programs?
Yeah. Maybe him and Zimmerman.
That raises the frightening possibility he could have been played by Andy Dick.
Is Andy Dick Felix? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something?
Now there is an obscure...
That's an interesting twist, and we're just going to go with that. You know, the great thing about the show is I think we're all just creating our collective headcanon together here.
It's true. It's true.
We'll just say Andy Dick is Felix for now.
Yeah, now we've seen him.
Because he never does say what his creator's name was.
Nope.
Okay, so my new number 4,
Okay.
I'm going to say Judith Sisko,
Ooh.
the sister of Benjamin Sisko and daughter of Joseph Sisko.
We only hear about her.
We only
3 or
hear
4
about
times,
Judith because
don't
she
we?
lives like in Minneapolis or somewhere,
Oh, does she?
or
Okay.
up north, or Oregon or something. I don't know.
Minneapolis, Oregon, they're basically the
They're
same.
basically the same thing, as I'm sure our American listeners will back me up on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. I know our impeccable grasp of their geography.
I'm trying here.
Yeah. Do we know what Judith does for a living?
No, just that she's not allowed in the kitchen because she doesn't put enough cayenne pepper in the gumbo. Or the jambalaya, one or the other. Either way, not enough cayenne pepper, and therefore Joseph says
not
she
allowed.
should never be allowed in the kitchen.
You see, that would be, if you pick that up under the sort of like auspices of Picard, there'd be a wonderful set of arguments to be had between Judith and Benjamin about how, their father liked him best because he was a cook, or all these, there'd be some meaty conversations to have there.
Like,
Maybe she heard him
I
quote the
guess
Bible more than
we'd have to
than Ben
assume
ever did.
she's not half prophet.
I'm going to guess.
She would be the daughter of
Now, is she older or
Joseph's
younger
second
than
wife.
Ben?
Well, it'd have to be his second wife, wouldn't it? So she'd have to be younger.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah, the woman Benjamin grew up thinking was his
Yes.
mother. Yeah,
The woman he calls Mama.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Judith Sisko.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about her entirely. Thank you for reminding me.
I mean, we barely see Nathan. We just see Nathan in the background.
That's true.
I don't know if he's a family member. We just hear about Nathan a lot.
That's true. I do like those bits where we have these sort of tendrils that we know we have a kind of window into these lives, but don't have a full grasp of who these characters are. You know, I think it personalizes them.
He plays a good restaurateur, though, because every time he walks by the kitchen, he's just, Nathan, don't forget to stir the gumbo. Like, you get the impression he says that to Nathan several times a day. And it's just like, I've worked in that industry, and I've seen similar individuals.
Nathan grits his teeth and stirs the gumbo.
Poor Nathan.
Oh, I love it.
But yes, Judith Sisko.
Lovely. Lovely. Well, now for my number 4, which is undisplaced, although it did a lot of displacement itself, is the Herc. This for...
Interesting. Good choice.
This is a species that sits relatively far back in Klingon history, toward the beginning of their space flight. It may predate their grasp of warp drive, I'm not sure. But this is a species that came into Klingon territory, nearly annihilated the Klingons as a species, drove them back to, I think, just a very couple of worlds in their own system. And then the Klingons rallied and pursued the Herc towards their own system, but I don't think ever found their homeworld. And so there's this sort of persisting, as if I recall correctly, the persisting Klingon sort of fear that the Herc would come back again. Again, paging CBS and Paramount, this is a great storyline.
Yeah, that's a good one. The people the Klingons fear.
Exactly. Like, you know, there's not that many.
I can't imagine the Klingons were ever pushovers. So.
No. Yeah.
The Herc just land. No,
what they do know, so here we go. They're a species from the Gamma Quadrant.
Oh, okay.
Which invaded and plundered Kronos in the 14th century.
Oh, yes, that's why they went to look for the Sword of Kahless in the Gamma Quadrant.
Because of the Herc, right?
The Herc took it, yeah.
Yeah. And who knows, that may have meant the Herc knew about the wormhole hundreds of years before the
Federation. Yeah, how did they get here?
Anybody else,
otherwise?
Right? Yeah. All part of the Prophet's plan.
Prophets don't like Klingons.
Yeah, so the Herc. That's my number 4.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay. Well, my number 3 is Captain Lisa Cusack.
Lisa Cusack.
From the Deep Space Nine episode, The Sound of Her Voice.
Oh, yeah.
Who I guess we see deceased.
Well, yeah, we see her corpse.
We see her corpse. All we ever do is hear her voice, but does she ever become a real person in that episode? It's just a beautiful episode, too.
That's a great episode. I forgot that.
And she's really cool. She's there slowly suffocating and dying, but she still plays pranks on them and jokes with them, gives them a hard time.
Oh, yeah.
Like she pretends she gets eaten by a monster when they stop paying attention to her. You don't even care. You weren't listening to her anyway.
Oh, her interactions with Julian are great. Yeah. That's a really poignant story.
Yeah, I love that episode.
One of the best time stories they do, honestly. Reminds me a little bit of
because you don't see it coming. Like there's no
there's no suggestion. This seemed like a very sort of
they're gonna either get there on time or they're not, but it's gonna be close.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of there's this wonderful film. I think it's called Les Maîtres du Temps, and it came out maybe early 80s. Art by Mobius, and it has a similar feel to that story. I always wondered if there was a connection sort of thematically, or if they'd kind of read it and thought, oh yeah, I would love to do something with an idea like that. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful animated film that deals with a similar sort of problem of space-time in a certain sense, you know?
Love that Mobius art.
Yeah. Oh, man. Doesn't get much better than
No,
Mobius.
it doesn't. Yeah.
So that
was my number 3.
Oh, that's a great
But her, I really wish they'd saved her, to be honest. I was really bummed out and sad by the end of that episode.
Yeah. No, it's got a real...
No,
it has
not Lisa. And they all are. They're like just gutted by it.
Yeah. Because I think they go out there in this really beautiful sort of intention of going after their comrade. You know?
They're supposed to be doing another thing that's quite important. And they're just like, well, no, we have to try to save this captain.
Yeah. Just a beautiful story. It really lays out the Federation.
Knowing that there's like all the numbers aren't working out. really doesn't look like there's any possible way they can get there on time.
Yeah.
They're trying to find ways for her to ration her supply and extend the time they have to get there, but there's no point at which they're like, yeah, well, we got the numbers to here, and maybe
No,
we're just
there
going to
was
go
always
anyway.
wrestling against the necessities. You know? Yeah, just beautiful. Now, there's an interesting sort of lateral slide here. My number 3 is also
I like
a
those.
captain.
Okay.
My number 3 is a charmer.
Oh,
A
yes.
one-date wonder.
Oh, I think I know who this is.
And you can see his brains.
Ah.
It's Captain Baudet.
Captain Baudet.
Yeah, who seems, I think, is a freighter captain.
I do not like
perhaps?
Captain Baudet.
I don't think there is a male character in that cast that likes Captain Baudet. They're all threatened by this charming, translucent skulled swashbuckler of the stars. You know?
Yeah, even Ezri has dinner with him, and Worf's just like, why were you having dinner with Baudet? She's like, well, what business is it of yours? He's just like, I don't like Baudet. Like,
I do not like Captain
I don't like Baudet.
Oh, there's a great early conversation with Jadzia and Kira where they talk about Jadzia's taste in men, and Kira cannot understand what she sees.
She doesn't
in Baudet.
understand the Baudet
She's like,
thing.
you just see too much of Baudet.
Yeah. She's like, you have to look at his brain while you're eating dinner.
But this is a lovely way to think about one of the ways in which biology shows up in the series, right? You know, we have
such differences in...
Yeah, and our sort of biologically determined side, the side that, you know, knows what we think secondary sexual characteristics are, all that sort of stuff. I could see that being really easily irked or fetishizing the extreme differences between ourselves and alien physiologies, you know? And that seems to be part of what's going on with Captain Baudet.
Yeah.
You know? Like there's this play of revulsion and then just interest and curiosity, right?
Yeah. He's a talker.
He's a talker.
He does go on a bit.
We have that in common.
Yeah, I think we know why Dave has chosen Captain Baudet. I think we've just figured this out here.
Oh, man. All right. So what's your number 2?
We're on number 2.
Yeah.
You're keeping track of this list very well.
Listen, old dog slowly learns new trick.
Yeah, exactly.
Arf.
Arfs.
Yeah.
Did
Just
you
call
say
me
Worf?
Pope Gowron?
Did you say Pope Galvin? Okay, my number 2 is a group.
A Groot?
A Groot.
Uh-huh.
It is Groot? No, it's a group.
Ah.
And that is the Niberite Alliance.
Ooh. Nice.
Apparently they're out on the fringes of Federation territory. I don't know what they do, who they do it for, but apparently Worf thinks they're a noble enough cause to want to join them.
That's
if
right.
He leaves the
That's
Federation.
where he's going to go and take...
He's going to go to the Niberite Alliance. Chief's like, the Niberite Alliance? That's pretty far away. But no, they never say what they do.
But it
It's,
feels
to me,
like-
it's the one thing Worf thinks of. Like, that's the first thing he thinks of. He's like, well, if I can't be in Starfleet, I can't join anything Klingon.
Yeah.
I guess it's the Niberite Alliance.
And maybe that's because they're far away, but it does seem like some of those smaller states that we see the Federation interacting with, like the Stralebians, you know, who tend to run very low warcraft and sometimes even are only armed with lasers and things like that. You know, some of these different technological levels at which people persist. I wonder if this, as you say, isn't just one of those sort of regional, you know, it's 3,000 light years away. It's going to take them 8 months to get there, or however long it's going to be.
Place he can probably find some glorious battle
Right.
in the name of a underdog cause.
Precisely.
Something like that.
Yeah. Heard it's nice at
Like
the
a
Alamo this time of year.
legitimized Maquis, basically.
Yeah.
Something like that, maybe. But I just want to know, so that's why
Yeah,
we're
I'd
there.
love to know that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're number 2.
My number 2 is someone that we've heard lots about and whose spirit has showed up on screen, but who's never physically been present.
Okay.
That is our dear friend Surak.
Oh, Surak. Well,
His
yes,
Katra has been on
his
screen.
Katra we have seen.
Technically.
That's an interesting deep
But
cut there.
Surak is one of those characters I would love to see make a great time travel episode.
Yeah.
It would make a great...
That would have been a good
just set of
Enterprise
flashbacks.
episode.
Would have been a
To
great
Paul when-
Enterprise.
To Paul go back and meet Surak and Archer.
Yeah.
Because he held his Katra. That
Yeah.
would have been interesting.
Yeah.
He has that relation with Surak, so.
Yeah, I think that would be really neat. There's a wonderful treatment of the teachings of Surak online that a fan put together.
Wow.
If I can find it, maybe I'll try and put the link in the description or something. But it's a great PDF, and it sort of has the feel of, you know, some of the great lists of the Ferengi rules of acquisition. Somebody's kind of put this together, pulling stuff out that they've heard in the series and things, and then also filling it out further. It's done sort of in world by a Starfleet officer who's gone to Vulcan to learn the Vulcan language and learn about Surak and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a lovely text.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
read
fun
that. Yeah, Surak.
read. Yeah,
Yeah, the founder of Vulcanism.
that's right.
Not Vulcanism.
The
Vulcanism.
the Vulcan adherence to logic as a way of life. I mean, that's something else I'd love to see in some of that, is just more looking at the different approaches to Surak's teaching. And because I like those Enterprise episodes, there were a couple of really lovely ones where they look at different offshoot groups of Vulcans who either disagree with Surak and want to do something different, or who think that they appeal to some of the disciples and friends of Surak who taught slightly different things. That we don't suppress emotions, we kind of live with them and let logic rule them. And there's but the Surak approach is the dominant one, certainly in 24th century Vulcan culture. I would that's fair to say.
Kind of character that rises up as an example of peace in a violent time, as we've seen examples of here on Earth.
Yeah,
Martin Luther King type figures. And
absolutely, yeah. So your number one
my new number one.
after
Poor Felix.
Felix was so brutally stolen from you.
Yeah, that's okay. Why did he make Vic so hard to work with?
It's true. That guy was a hard bargain.
My number one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to look to Starfleet Academy if we were going to try to find this person.
Okay.
That would be somebody who's been talked about in at least 2 series, but I think gets a mention in Deep Space Nine too.
Okay.
But it's definitely mentioned in Voyager and TNG, and that's Dr. Vassbinder.
Wow, now there's a deep cut. Tell us about Dr.
Dr.
Vassbinder.
Vassbinder has been brought up a few times. I think the first time is the time Wesley comes back from the Academy. He's quite cocky, has all the new, fresh ideas in his head from the Academy, and Geordi's trying to show him his new plasmadyne relay.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud of it, and he was expecting a fun moment with his nerd buddy who loves this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Wesley just kind of blows it off, saying it's antiquated, that we don't even need to use plasmadyne relays, because Dr. Vassbinder, if you read his newest paper, has now I forget what they were called, but has a new technique.
Right.
I think probably in the theoretical stage.
Right.
Chakotay failed Dr. Vassbinder's class on something time-related.
Okay.
Something. It was a time class, though. It was in a time travel episode. He's just like, I don't know. I failed Dr. Vassbinder's class. Like, I'm just here for the ride on this one. Commander,
great.
except in time travel episodes. That's what it says on his pips. But perhaps the most famous reference of Dr. Vassbinder is the time Picard had to see him do a presentation that was not even the right presentation for the particular conference, but nobody could stop him because he spoke in one long, unbroken sentence. It was really quite hypnotic.
Oh, man. I love that episode. That's one of the only episodes we see the back end of a Danube runabout. Because that's what they're traveling on back to the Enterprise. Yeah. I love that scene where he's doing the impression and they're all just
Never had a chance
cracking
to
up.
interrupt. It was quite hypnotic.
But you see, like, there's a lovely continuity between that moment and, Picard dressing up like the terrible human trafficker in the first season.
Yeah,
of Picard,
he loves to do a goofy impression.
He loves goofy accents,
Yeah,
right?
he does. And he's good at them. Like, he's doing weird things with his eyes when he's doing the Vassbinder. Like,
Oh,
Vassbinder
yeah.
seems like a character, and that's why I want to see him. He just comes on an episode, and the whole episode is him talking because no one can interrupt him.
Just him saying hello out of the airlock.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be a great episode no matter what series he showed
That's
up in.
true. Just
I feel like
plug
it
him
should almost
anywhere.
have been TNG. But Vassbinder. I would love to
Nice.
see any episode with Vassbinder.
Nice. So, my number one has a tiny bit of cheating about it.
Oh my.
I'll explain the structure of my larceny. What I'm
In
talking
number one
about,
position, it better be a good explanation.
it's true. It's really about two species that we've heard mention of. One very recent, one which reaches right back into the depths of sort of Trek history. But neither of them have we ever seen depicted in live action. I think there are depictions of one in Star Trek Online, and the other has showed up in the animated series, but was also mentioned in one of my favorite deep cut references in the first season of Picard by Riker when they're at the house.
Oh, yes.
He says, "We've had trouble with Kizenti,
Trouble with the
the great
Kizenti again.
felinoid 8-foot or 9-foot tall creatures that humans fought a series of wars with very early on, maybe even before the Romulan Earth War, and had, as a result of those wars, confined them from having one of the terms of their treaty in the end was that sort of Kizenti space ends up being almost entirely encircled by the Federation.
Oh, yeah.
They're not allowed to raise sort of war weapons, but they have these patrol ships they can use. And it's one of those patrol ships that shows up in a great animated series episode called The Slaver Weapon. And we should see they have a certain amount of telepathic ability and have a strictly biologically divided society. Females by the Kizenti are considered non-sentient. And so you don't really only ever encounter a Kizenti male out there on a starship, one assumes.
Well, I don't agree with that at all.
Well, and that's your prerogative, sir. You're a progressive Kizenti advocate. And the other one, linked to them, is a species from out sort of that side of the Federation, but down closer to Ferengi and Cardassian space, who are called the Zenkethi.
The Zenkethi.
Who seem to be some kind of reptilian kind of a race, who, the fact that they're close to the Cardassians in that respect, I find interesting.
Wedged between Cardassian and Federation space, aren't
Pretty
they?
much, yeah.
Just
Sort of
below
in that whole
Bajoran
area.
space, kind of.
Yeah. Just all, sort of out on the edges of the Bajor sector, essentially, I think. Coreward from Bajor. But,
Like, you hear of both Federation and Cardassian skirmishes with the...
absolutely. And the Zenkethi is one of the diversions used by the Dominion at one point when they're, I forget what they're doing, but they send them out that way in order to do something different.
Well, they're in a tough position if they want to expand anywhere. They can't go anywhere.
Yeah, and they've got the Sheliak and the Tholians nearby as well. So
They
there's
always
nowhere
seem
to go.
strong enough to repel or at least hold off the Federation or Cardassian. So
Yep.
they would be interesting.
Yeah, well, the other thing about the Kizenti, Zenkethi just I'm always reminded of by the Kizenti, but the Kizenti are also one of the things in Star Trek that I think is really delicious because they're a wholly independent creation of the author Larry Niven, right? But when the Slaver Weapon was taken up as a story, because Niven had written, one of these stories, and they said we'd like to adapt it essentially for Star Trek, he said, sure, yeah, use the Kizenti, that's great. And so this whole different set of stories is somehow shoehorned in the back door of Star Trek's canonicity by virtue of this one animated episode and one line from Riker 50 years later. I love it. But there's something so broad about that it really takes my fancy,
Now say Zenkethi Kizenti 10 times fast.
I do not like Captain Baudet. Oh, on to biology then, eh?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, a good branch from the list to the topic of biology is the avians from the planet Zindus.
One of the 5 Xindi species, right? Or sentient
6.
species. 6, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
being
then
the
they lost the avians.
there's the arboreals, there's the primates, I guess they call them. They're like the humanoids kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's the insectoids, the reptilians,
And then there's the
aquatics,
Yeah.
and the avians who did not survive the cataclysm.
I loved some of those scenes in Enterprise when they were deliberating, and you could see the sort of sensibilities of these different species really contesting against each other. But it's an interesting science fiction notion to imagine a planet where there have developed sentient creatures in all kinds of environments. And, you know, we're getting closer on this planet to accepting the fact that dolphins are pretty clever and that whales seem to have...
Star Trek 4
deep
showed us
thoughts.
that certainly whales.
Precisely. And, you know, every Starfleet ship has the possibility to have a cetacean ops section, right? The Enterprise D certainly had cetacean ops. Dolphins were understood to be quite excellent at astronavigation, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that it's not something, the closest thing we see to that, which doesn't actually really count at all, is just the Romulans with the Remans just next to them, but they just came in and took over the
Yeah.
They just took over their
Yeah.
territory.
And I mean, that's the essential Romulan pattern that they follow in every other encounter. They either turn the species into a client species or they enslave them. They did the same with the Nausicaans and all sorts of people, right? Now, these are some interesting, like, there's ways in which I think we can comment on how biology influences culture. If you take an example like the Nausicaans, who grow up on a really hard Scrabble planet, where there's intense competition for every kind of resource, the Nausicaan practice of contesting things with violence and guile, which seem to be two of their defining traits, makes an awful lot of sense. In the same way as we can see the many physical redundancies of Klingons, including their armored skulls and, you know, multiple redundant organs and, you know, part and parcel of how they get through the universe. A human would not necessarily subject themselves to the things that Klingon does.
No.
You know, like
Certainly wouldn't.
the ritual of ascension, right? As O'Brien, you know, quite naturally points out, that makes some people's heads explode, those pain sticks, you know.
The bachelor party.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, the bachelor party.
I'm going to do it, Miles. I've come to the realization. I'm going to kill Worf. Kill Worf. Kill Worf. Jesus. Come on. She's like, I'm going to do it. I'm a doctor in Starfleet, but I am going to kill my commanding officer. But yeah, the biology on Zindus, super interesting. Strange that we don't see more instances of that, even just in Star Trek.
Sure.
Or
Yeah,
really
there
other
seems to be a lot of
sci-fi.
singular,
It's just not
singular
something-
sentient species per planet.
I mean,
you
I
know?
guess we do see another example of that. Isn't there an episode where somebody has... Oh, it's the Kesprit.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if
Kesprit.
the Kes or the Prit, they act like they're different species, and they look a little bit different, so I don't know if
Yeah.
what the deal is there. But
And there's you know,
and they don't get along. They've split their planet in half, basically.
yeah, the original series episode with Lokai and the other guy whose name I don't remember.
Bella.
Bella, there you go. Which was, yeah, a bit of a ham-fisted episode, but certainly does a similar thing.
Similar thing, you know.
Yeah, but it seems, yeah, that a lot of the time the sense is that there'd be a sort of single dominant sentient species on a planet, you know? Or maybe planets tend to only produce one sentient species.
And they played a big part in the Xindi storyline, the avians.
And now, you know...
Because it seems like they're all suffering this, like, shared kind of PTSD from the loss of the avians. Like, these different species on Xindus don't get along, but they do have, like, a huge amount of genetic similarity. Like, they can...
And they're
somewhere down the
incentivized-
line probably came from
Yeah, they're incentivized to work together,
a proto-Xindi species or
you know,
something.
by the loss of the avians, right?
Yeah.
That they had so ruined their planet.
But without the loss of the avians, I don't think we see the Xindi attack Earth.
Nope.
I don't think they would have that collective fear between them all.
No, and I think there would have been no reason for them to be contacted by those other creatures.
Not
right?
so
They
easily.
just
I mean,
wouldn't-
they
it
just would have
wouldn't
picked
worked very
somebody
well.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting the part that they end up playing.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that thought we were just having about sort of single species sentience, you know, I wonder if that might not be one of those ways to track species seeded by
The progenitors.
progenitors. right? Maybe
in the
they're-
TNG episode The Chase.
Yeah. Wonder, that's a two-parter, I think, isn't it?
No.
Was that a single episode?
Yeah, it's just really tight and
There's
really
a lot
good.
going on in that episode.
Yeah, there's the storyline with the Klingon,
Yeah.
who ends up aboard their ship because his ship gets disabled.
Oh, yeah, and he has that great conversation with Data.
Yeah, your strength is known even in the Klingon Empire. He's like, will you play the strength game with me? He's just like, sure. Slams him down instantly. He's just like, oh!
He headbutts himself and almost knocks himself out.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
Yeah.
We are here doing scientific research. Picard and the Romulan are just like, what?
No, you're not.
No, you're
Not
not.
likely.
Come up with a good lie, at least.
But yeah, I wonder if something in the seeding means that the kind of sentience they tended to produce was the sort that sort of colonizes a planet and uses, as a recent article title I was reading in my newsfeed said, humans are a cuckoo using the Earth as a nest. Which, might be...
We're sitting in mine right now.
Exactly. So yeah, the
Watch those eggs there.
Oh, I thought that was some kind of protoplasma you were just dropping there. That's what
If it looks like protoplasm, it's already too late.
But yeah, the progenitors, in that sense, influence, I think, the entire galaxy's evolutionary direction.
Such a good episode.
Because there's so much of body plans. And it's a good way for...
It's beautiful as an explanation of why everyone's bipedal.
Yeah, why there's all this bilateral symmetry in sentient creatures, right?
Most species have 10 fingers.
Yeah.
Gets pretty detailed, the similarities. And
Yeah.
obviously that's for budget reasons in television, but I love it as an explanation in universe.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I just think it's beautiful as a kind of a message of unification in the Alpha Quadrant. Now, it doesn't say how far that influence goes, but it seems like an Alpha Beta Quadrant kind of thing. Though, played by Salome Jens, who played the founder lady, and they look a lot
sure
alike,
did.
and I just wonder if that's
Yeah.
if they ended up evolving into the founders, or
Oh, you never know.
if
Yeah.
kind of the Gamma Quadrant's tied into that as well.
Well, we see a lot of bilateral
Bi-
symmetry in the gamma
yeah,
and
that's
delta
true.
quadrants as well.
Yeah.
Which makes me suspect maybe they went quite far afield.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they're doing that seeding 4 billion years ago, something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. They were the first species, from what they can
so
tell.
it
They
could
said
be
they
there's a
searched
line-
endlessly the cosmos and found no one like
There
themselves.
could be a line through the
which is also kind
through
of
the
sad and
Iconians
beautiful.
to
There's a
us.
lot of nice things in that.
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, there are.
We searched endlessly and found no one like ourselves. So we just left a message for...
Whoever might find it, yeah. In some ways, very much like the probe they find,
the
the
Resicans.
Resican probe. But in a whole different order of magnitude,
I'm sure they also had good flautists.
I'm sure they may have. Perhaps even a nose flautist or two.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That is impressive.
Gotta love a good nose flout.
Now, they probably would have been my number one choice in that list had we not seen them once.
Indeed.
Because that's amazing. If they had just been an idea and you didn't, a voice or something, probably would have picked them. 'Cause
Yeah.
that is a great episode. Really does a lot of work in explaining the biology of the Star Trek universe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, it makes some of those species and creatures that sit, in some ways, outside of those orders
yeah.
really stand out. The Zindi, for instance, who have this...
And the other ones, how they're sort of
Hex double.
connected in a way that they aren't sort of connected to the Tholians or
Oh, yeah. The
what are they
Sheliak or the Gorn or some
called
of these
from the
creatures.
animated series with their
Oh, the Edoans with the
Ed-
third arm.
the
yeah.
Edoans, yeah.
Or for that matter,
Who we also see in Lower Decks.
creatures like the Horta,
Yeah.
the great
yeah,
pizza
sure.
creature from Janus 6, which are a wonderful notion, that they have these pearl-like eggs, and the whole species is reduced down to a single
It's individual.
exponent, individual who can guard the eggs and wait for them to hatch,
And lay all the eggs, I believe. I believe they
They
end
have
up
laid all the eggs
being
as well.
like the culmination of
Yeah.
the DNA of that generation, and then they lay all the eggs, because I think that's what it's doing. It's chewing out the caves to lay the eggs in. Well,
Yeah, and it's trying to protect and keep the eggs safe till they hatch, right? That's a very interesting biology. That's a
It
silicon-based
is.
biology, I think, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they eat rocks.
And they're
Minerals.
capable of certain kinds of telepathic communication. You know, like that touch contact with a Vulcan, for instance. I wonder if a beta is ever
So
going to
much
be able
pain.
to. Yeah. In my hand, he says.
And
But, you know, they're one of those creatures that ultimately ends up getting folded into the Federation. The new generation of Horta. Some of them end up serving aboard Federation starships.
super interesting. Probably the Titan, because the Titan was known as the ship that had the most diverse crew.
Oh, they might have had a Horta aboard, sure. Yeah.
And it was such a big ship, and they had different sections of the ship that were designed to be comfortable for different species and things like that.
Oh, right on. Well, that's certainly a feature. If you look back in the technical manual for the Enterprise D, there's a really interesting section. I mean, interesting for terrible, terrible nerds.
No, just wonderful podcast listeners.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I meant to say. Wonderful podcast.
We'll cut what you said.
That's a good idea. We should do that more often, too.
We're an open book here at Locutors.
There's a really interesting section where they're talking about the makeup of quarters, that quarters have individually variable gravity, temperature, humidity, that you can, in fact, request certain kinds of accommodations for different gas makeups for atmosphere and all sorts of stuff, right? So, yeah, they're intended to be able to be retrofit, but the Titan being set up for that is another kind of step beyond, you know.
Well, their chief engineer is Melora, so...
Oh, is it? Oh, right
they
on.
probably have all of engineering low gravity,
I imagine they do.
or at least a large portion of it.
Funnest engineering department in Starfleet. We don't use stairs or anything. We just float.
Well, they could just have a lot of... I don't remember the name of her species, but they could just have a lot of them working in engineering, too.
Yeah.
Just you do see certain ships even that become very... Well, I guess we always have. The Enterprise is very human-centric.
Well, and there was a Constellation or a
there's the Vulcan
Constitution
ship.
class ship that was all Vulcan.
Yeah.
Right, that was one of their first major contributions to Starfleet in terms of sort of material they produced and produced and crewed it.
Yeah, Saylock or whatever his
Something
name
like
was.
that. Yeah.
Such a jerk. My game.
Oh yeah, that's another all Vulcan.
That's
ship,
not
isn't it?
that's not the one you're talking about. No.
This was one that would have been contemporaneous with the original with the original Enterprise.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I don't
no,
remember the name of it now, but
He didn't like to work with non-Vulcans. That captain.
yeah, that's the guy from
inefficient.
DS9. Yeah, exactly. Now that's another interesting. You know, we talked about the folks from the low gravity world, that her bones are fragile and that her muscles get tired. Vulcans, who we all know are very strong and that sort of thing, have this because they come from a high gravity world, right? The planet orbiting 40 Eridani A that they come from is, I think, 1.3 G or something is its normal gravity. So humans would feel sluggish.
I believe Archer or somebody comments as how they feel like they have lead in their boots.
Yeah, but that difference has meant that Vulcan bones tend to be very dense. So an average Vulcan will mass more than an average human of the same sort of rough body size.
Yep.
And they tend to be...
They're stronger than Klingons.
2 to 3 times stronger than an average human, yeah. So often as strong or stronger than Klingons. Partially because they're just operating in environments where their muscles are just so much stronger than they need to be for that gravity.
Which explains why the Romulans don't have that. They went to Romulus, which seems to be more of Earth-like gravity.
Yeah.
And they lost that strength, it would seem, over time.
Yeah.
Along with their psionic abilities. Or maybe that's even connected, who knows?
Well, we don't know, no, because the history of Vulcan is pretty murky that way, right? And both its tectonics and its dryness and all those other features. I guess there are some sort of hints in Vulcan historiography that the planet wasn't always that way. And that somewhere in their past, they kind of broke Vulcan and created their own ecological disaster that made the planet the way it is today. Although the nictitating membranes that Vulcans have, to me, would argue against that, right? Like that would say to me that they've been in a place where there's a lot of blowing wind and blowing particulate.
They have two
air.
eyelids, inner eyelids,
Exactly.
like cats.
And that to me says that they either have to keep their eyes open a lot in bright sunlight, or there's some kind of stuff that's going to blow into their eyes and constantly irritate it, unless those are present.
Archer offers to Paul sunglasses. It's just
Oh, yeah.
like, I evolved on this world.
It's true.
Never to soften the blow to Paul.
No.
Aren't you supposed to be Starfleet's finest? God. He's like, I needed sunglasses in Florida. I fucked on that world.
And then there are creatures that don't.
Back, not to interrupt you, but back to Xindi for 1 second. Wouldn't it be cool if Earth had a similar thing, though? We had, like, the Velociraptor people and, like, the dolphin people, or, like, that would
We're just not letting Bigfoot have a chance to open
the
any
giant
schools or
scorpion
education
people.
centers, man.
Yeah. That would be cool.
It would be pretty
Infinite
amazing.
diversity, man.
Infinite combinations. Yeah.
And the bird people. Like, they, wouldn't it be cool to have a bird friend?
Oh, yeah. I remember, there was this old issue of National Geographic. I remember from years and years ago, my parents had this big shelf of National Geographic when I was a kid. And I would just randomly pull them out, and there was this one story in it that talked about sort of a kind of imaginative evolutionary picture of what saurian creatures would have looked like if they had sort of developed to the point of being tool-using animals.
The Voyager episode.
Oh, there's a lovely Voyager episode about that.
Where they're called the Saurians, I
think so,
and
maybe, yeah.
Were a dinosaur that left Earth.
Yeah, and I think you can still find, it's a very famous image it was this sort of reptilian creature with kind of big eyes and 3 or 4 digits and
it is.
A kind of bipedal body plan wearing a loincloth.
Yep.
With some kind of bag strapped along the side of it, right? Yeah, and it struck me as so exciting. I thought, oh man, wouldn't it be great if our world did contain those things? It'd be such a different perspective on life.
Yeah.
Your
bird friend could sleep like half brain at a time, and you just like see their eye kind of slip.
It'd be amazing.
Are you paying attention to me? Oh,
well,
yes.
Half. Yeah, it would be pretty incredible. Although we are apparently fairly close to cracking dolphin language.
Yeah, that would be.
That's what they
I
say
look
about
forward to
5-10
that
years
day.
ago.
I definitely want to have a conversation with a dolphin.
It just turns out dolphins are
this year, if
always
possible.
Just always heckling. Nice hat, guy in the boat.
I've been practicing.
How rude.
I see you've been practicing as well. Wasn't expecting that.
I've been genetically modifying myself on the side.
Speaking of genetic modification, that's a biological topic we could bring up. I mean, Dave is wannabe Suliban.
What a great species. Yeah. There's lots of others who have similarly modified themselves. The Borg have modified themselves to the point that the modifications sort of are the species.
Famously, the Augments and Klingon.
Yeah. And of course, then there's the 2 confected species that we meet, the Jem'Hadar and the Vorta, who the founders sort of built from the ground up out of some pre-existent early creatures. At least with the Vorta. The Jem'Hadar they may have just made whole cloth.
Yeah, it looks like they cooked the Jem'Hadar in a lab.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Vorta were kind of a monkey-type creature.
Yeah. And the Augments to me are one of those beautiful ways in which the older history of Trek stays current. Khan showing up in the original series, and then of course Wrath of Khan, which apart from Undiscovered Country, maybe the best classic Trek movie.
It's pretty great. Yeah, for me it's number 3. I like a Voyage Home a lot.
Oh, that's a great one.
Got to save those whales.
Yeah, they're just so irresponsible in that movie. I have a hard time watching them interact with 20th century Earthlings. But apart from that, it's a great movie.
Where do you keep the nuclear vessels?
Nuclear vessels.
The nuclear vessels.
Oh man! So the history of the Augments, though, stays with us right through Deep Space Nine and has a powerful impact on that series.
Sure, yes, of Julian Bashir.
But sees some interesting deployments in some of the newer versions of Trek as well. You think about Lower Decks, or some of the ways we see cyborgs appear in Discovery. There's some kinds of augmentations which are okay.
But Bashir and that group of kind of defective augments that he works with are kind of an underground resurgence of that technology. As that was kind of an issue dealt with long before even Kirk's day. It's been illegal the whole time.
The
eugenics war on Earth, which was closer to our time than their
it would
time.
have ended in, I think, about 2020 or something, as I recall.
And we're developing similar technologies now that can lead to the ability to start to augment ourselves. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we handle it a little better.
But it really has determined in huge ways the way that the Federation has developed as a culture, because they're really anti genetic modification for sort of recreational or eugenic purposes.
And I wonder if other planets have their own reasons for this, having that similar feeling.
Could well.
Not just because of the Earth example.
Yeah, well, it seems to have become general Federation law in any event.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it seemed a very outlawed kind of taboo thing for the Suliban even way back then. Everyone was just like, whoa, they're like genetically modified here.
Yeah, because that's true. We do meet the Suliban in the pilot episode who says they're not...
They're like, why would you let somebody do this to you? Like, why would I not? I can breathe in space. And
yeah, but they seem to have been a sort of extremist sect among the
true.
Suliban, who themselves were more comfortable with it, I think, than humans would be.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably how you get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But... yeah, I mean, there are other kinds of fusions. You know, the Binars or the Borg are other kinds of fusions of technology and
biology.
flesh, which are not quite the same as the kind of augmentation the Suliban would tend to practice. But in both cases, interestingly, the technology takes them over. Because the Binars' hard drive is about to crash, essentially, and so they need the Enterprise.
Yep.
And for the Borg, their dedication to a certain concept of
the unification of two branches of exploration and development. The perfect combination of those two fields.
It's become the only thing they are. Because they aren't any kind of diversity anymore. They aren't any kind of individuality or anything like that. All of that is irrelevant.
And it's kind of replicated biology, you could say.
In what sense? Like data?
Yeah, like data or an exocomp.
Oh, gosh, yeah, the exocomps.
Where it's not really biology we're talking about anymore, more technology, which would probably be its own episode.
Yeah,
but it's interesting how it is just a mirror of biology, especially data. He just sort of just has a technological version of everything biological. He's like, yeah, I can sweat if I want, or he can do all those things. He can. Yeah, he's like, I can eat if I want.
It's it's one of the things it raises in my mind is, at various points. There's the moment when the Enterprise might be destroyed because Nagilum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they have a fascinating discussion.
The big blue face.
Yeah, I think it might be Picard and Crusher and Wesley have a discussion about what they think is going to happen once they're dead. Mm-hmm. And Picard is clearly he's not an adherent of any organized religion, it's clear, but he has this deeply spiritual take on what consciousness is. And he sees that as incapable of being eradicated. In the sense that Plato would have discussed the soul using the body like a coat, right? Mm-hmm. We don't disappear when our coat is worn out, nor can the soul become dead when the body has ceased to function, he would argue, right? Mm-hmm. And in fact, Plato argues in the Phaedo that the life of the body is the closest the soul ever comes to death. But it asks questions about what is that emergent spark in data, in the exocomps, in other things that lends them that quality that we understand as liveliness, right? Of intention, of a faculty of causation that's independent from the rest of the beings around it, right? And that can influence and affect them in non-passive ways.
I mean, you could ask Noonien Soong. He could tell you what that key component is, I think.
I wonder if he could.
Yeah, I mean, he got there, but he could have just stumbled there.
But I wonder if he didn't have a sense of
often wrong Soong.
Well, and with data, it appears that something about the positronic element of his network is what allows it. And I mean, if we're going to be super serious about it, a positron is a time-reversed electron, right? It's an antimatter electron, and so has sort of inverse properties, essentially, which ultimately means, to me, at least, as a guy who has done a lot of thinking about the nature of consciousness, the capacity in us to recursively take ourselves sort of in view in our minds and think back over all that we've been in real time and allow that to be influenced by our ongoing reflections. That, to me, biologically is an analog of an electron-positron back and forth. Where that time reversion can allow a kind of reflection which is like our self-reflexive consciousness.
That's interesting, yeah.
It doesn't depend exactly on time, even though it persists and subsists and enacts in time.
There's a more relevant connection to the past than
Yeah.
what just a standard machine,
Yeah.
hyper intelligent.
Because I think we are that
Who would have
Measure of
no-
a Man and much
Yeah.
of the rest of Star Trek argues that Data has consciousness, which is not reducible to simply highly sophisticated algorithmic input-output patterns, right? Like there's something that transcends
There's obviously something in Data that does do that,
absolute, just like there is in us, right?
but as Picard says in Measure of a Man, he doesn't know what that is in him either,
Yeah,
or that he even has one.
yeah.
He's
But
like,
we know that we're here, right? We know
Yeah.
that we're existent. on
he's
a
like,
lot
I'll
of
tell you I'm sentient. You'll tell me I'm sentient, but I can't prove that to you any more than I can prove it for
It's a
Mr.
black
Data
box,
here.
right?
He's just
Yeah.
like, so he's like, if we're playing that game,
But that's
do
the
it
thing
across
that
the board.
that I even about the biology here that I love is that each of these ways we come at body plans
Mm-hmm.
or how planets evolve sentient life, which is sort of the basic question we're dancing around here,
Mm-hmm.
and how you represent that interestingly in narrative forms,
yeah,
as something to ponder and interact with.
in a world like Star Trek, finding some real believable biological differences that you can
Right?
attribute to.
But somehow all of that extrudes from that original sort of impulse to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in that sense, each creature, each person, each member of the Federation is this sort of font of mysterious source. You know, a spring whose actual, you know, like an artesian spring whose actual source we don't see because it's always hidden in the ground, right?
The universe experiencing itself.
Absolutely, right?
It's gonna do it everywhere.
Yeah, infinitely in every point, right? And I think that's one of the beauties that comes out of this kind of long form consideration of technical, cultural, biological, physiological, anatomical differences.
Yeah, which
And even
Star
going
Trek
beyond those.
finds, like you say, interesting narrative ways to tackle. There's genderless species, like in The Outcast.
Sure. Or
They-
species that have a sort of genderless component in them as well.
Yeah, and there's also a trigendered species, like in the co-genitors in
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Enterprise,
Yeah.
which are two interesting ways they...
Oh, I think I was conflating it with that episode. That's right. I was conflating the Outcast with the Cogenitors.
Oh, yes. Well, The Outcast is the one where Riker strikes up a relationship with a member of a
Yes.
androgynous species.
Yes.
Though they're seemingly at a point where they're having some emergent gender separation.
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah. An interesting
But-
way to
but-
think about gender identity and gender expression
Yeah.
as independent of biological form. You know, there's a lot of arguments about that in our world right now.
Sure.
I think people get confused about saying that, you know, there is such a thing as literal, you know, your physical plumbing, which might be, say, male or female or lots of mixtures in the middle of that, you know, sort of on a spectrum, right? But
Oh,
that givenness of our biology isn't always the same as how we experience ourselves and how we express that culturally, right? And that's where I think we arrive at the level of gender. But people often seem to try and reduce or confuse the two things, you know? And
Well, and that member of
We
the
see that
androgynous
tension played
species
out
in
here.
that episode, yeah.
Yeah, very much.
She just tells Riker that she thinks she's female, though. She's especially now that she's on the ship and she's seeing the difference between the two right up close.
yeah,
She's
She
just
notices
like,
there
well,
are
I
things
don't
about
think
her
I'm like
experience."
you. She's just like, to Riker, but I like you.
yeah,
I mean, one of the worst moments in Star Trek history is the look on Riker's face when she tells him that she feels like she's female, though. A little bit creepy, Riker. That's the worst
Yes.
Riker moment in,
Oh.
in the history of the show.
Yeah, I mean, Riker and his
I
interaction
didn't know your
with women
smile
he's
could reach
attracted
your
to is
eyeballs,
like-
but apparently it
Good
can.
God.
While blushing quite a bit, mind you.
Yeah, it's true. Oh
Yeah,
my god,
not my favorite moment. Good episode.
Yeah, Riker.
Settle
is a
down,
hound dog.
Riker.
Riker is a hound dog.
Bit of a hound in those days.
Yeah, it's true.
Needed a strong Betazoid woman to,
That's true. Straighten him out.
yeah, set some ground rules. He's like, I have a plant on every away mission, buddy. Plus, I can read your mind and emotions, so
Yeah, it's true.
see you at supper.
Well, and you know there are some creatures like that who have abilities that seem to transcend strict biological function as we currently understand it. You know, telepathy in the Beta Z sense, the shape shifting of the founders. But then there are creatures that
Well, we
have
skip-
abilities that are just completely outside of our. You know, the creature from Farpoint, or
Oh, sure.
the lovely sort of asteroid space whale things they meet. In,
The Gormaganders
Well,
in
Gormaganders, yeah.
Discovery.
Oh, which is that's a great creature and a great name.
Yeah, Gormagander.
But also the creatures that the Enterprise meets in TNG, where the little baby one attaches itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And, like, little baby is, like, half the size of the saucer section.
Milk suckers.
Yeah, yeah. You have to sour the milk.
Sour the milk. Oh, it was in Relics.
You know, and those have the capacity,
No,
like
no,
Tin
they
Man,
just mentioned it in Relics. Never.
to exist in the vacuum of space, right? That is a wholly different biology than we can even conceive, other than maybe
Yeah.
mushrooms or tardigrades.
Well,
Right.
yeah, I was going to bring up the tardigrade. One of the things I really like that we see a few times in Star Trek is when they make the micro macro.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because I deal with the micro a lot in my daily life, and I'm always concerned with the microbiology of soil and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, and complete ecosystems and
Sure.
biomes.
I suppose that side you can't see except for its function.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You can tell if it's not there. You just can't see if it's there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I like when Star Trek makes the micro macro, which they do with those tardigrades
Mm-hmm.
in Discovery, which I think is a very cool creature.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of zips along the mycelial network.
Yeah, yeah.
Super hardy. I mean, tardigrades can survive in space, so it's not even that big of a thing. It's just
There
a
apparently might
scaled
be
up
some on
version.
the moon that we accidentally
Yeah.
left there that are just sitting there hibernating.
Could be
Yeah.
evolving into moonigrades.
Moonigrades. Oh.
Or do you like Tardimoons better? Tardimoons.
I do like the sound of
Yeah, Tardimoons.
Tardimoons.
So,
Oh, man.
I, for one, welcome our Tardimoon overlords.
Overlords.
Yeah.
Ooh. Gosh, you're giving them a lot of...
I mean, I'm not going to
Rope
say
to
it's
chew
going to
on.
happen immediately, but left alone to their own devices,
to their own devices.
Mhm.
They'll just Tardimoon it up.
looking at us and our cool beaches and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thinking, oh, those guys.
The
reveling in
resentment
their
will build, Dave.
oxygen.
I welcome you, Tardimoons. Don't worry, Dave will come on board. He just needs some time.
Never, in the classic words of Jean-Luc Picard, we will fight you!
This far, no father.
That's right. So yeah, then there's creatures that go all the way beyond biology entirely.
Well, and with the macro thing, though, Voyager does the episode Macrocosm, where they have macroscopic viruses that have infiltrated the ship, and these viruses are, the size of a dog, or good, but they're flying around doing what viruses do. They're just now it makes you wonder if they evolved kind of alongside creatures like the Gormagander, whose great size kind of
Sure.
scale up and makes more sense with these
Yeah.
kind of viruses that they. I mean, there has to be some organism they're designed to.
Well, and I think isn't there a Voyager episode where they accidentally pierce the side of a giant space creature and don't even realize they've done it for quite some time?
Yes. Now, I don't think it's clear that is a creature of biology. That seemed to, from what I recall,
It's
I
got
think I
some
remember
kind
the
of
episode.
energetic structure, but I don't know if it has a whole lot of physical structure.
Yeah, like it's made up of nebulas and asteroid fields and like.
Yeah.
But it is a creature, and there's the guy who's stuck in there because it messes with your mind. It has.
Oh, that's right.
And the
That's
guy who
right.
thinks he's trying to kill it, and like.
Yeah.
They find a way out, and he's just like, I've been trying to get out of here forever, and then they finally give him a way out, and he's just like, no, I must stay and hunt the creature. It's just like, well,
That's right.
Yeah, that
that's
guy.
right. I think there was an original series episode, something like that as well.
but there
yeah.
are transcendent entities that probably started as biology and transcended that, like
And certainly we see an episode of that.
Q,
we
of course.
see the Q, and also the now
the travelers, maybe in a way.
the Travelers, but also the luminous.
What's a Nugulum or Nagilum?
Yeah, we don't know what a Nagilum is, but also the guy who becomes luminous in the
sure.
season 3
Transfigurations.
TNG episode, Transfigurations. I guess 3-5 maybe, I forget. What a lovely episode.
Yeah.
That his it's almost like he's kind of shedding or molting,
His people are after him. They
Yeah.
say he's a dangerous criminal.
And he's a kind of criminal that they've known for a time on that planet, who's breaching their societal norms.
Yeah, he's technically a criminal, but he
Yeah.
hasn't done anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would classify him ultimately as a kind of terrorist on their world.
Yeah. A biological terrorist.
Yeah, precisely. And it's partly because they're afraid of this really punctuated moment of evolution they're coming toward.
He's an X-Man.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
That's the TNG X-Men episode. That's
the
what I took
mutation,
from
sure.
it upon recent watching.
That's a lovely
oh, this is
that's
the
a lovely
X-Men.
take. Yeah. Because it's that jump in evolution that they're fearing. It represents, I think, a kind of death for them. a cultural death, a material death.
Mm-hmm.
The
Their
change.
culture is going to be just massively altered
forever
in ways
altered,
that they don't want to happen or to deal with, because it's going to be chaotic, I'm sure.
Well, and I think we see similar.
Not all are
theories.
going to transcend. There's going to be this separation in their
Absolutely.
society, which is what they're separate or they're worried about. Just like in X-Men, the
Sure.
humans are worried about that they're not the better anymore.
Yes. And, there are also ways in which that episode, to me, figures and kind of meditates on the process of suffering and grief that are parts of the biological realities we experience, Because suffering is just essentially unavoidable in life because everything is free.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be that friction. There's always going to be some microorganism that's gotten into me that hasn't gotten into you, or into you that hasn't gotten into me. There's always that level of...
It's the same on the microscopic. Sometimes atoms or things are going to smash into each other.
Absolutely, right? And the other side of that is the sense of grief that those who remain behind experience. Now, in my day-to-day work, I deal with an enormous amount of grief. And it can be a beautiful thing, right at
Me
the
too,
moment
when
of
a
death.
tree dies. It's not the same thing. But
It can crack people open and let them experience their humanity together. But grief can also cave us in on ourselves. Grief can force us to confront the possibility and horizon of our own mortality in ways that can really hit people where they are living, for lack of a better word / pun. And people can get terrified and angry and combative and all sorts of things around those moments because it's a violation of our sense of being alive. And I think that's what that character in some ways represents to his people. That very violation of just everything they feel that they are, and all those ways they know of identifying and understanding themselves as sort of selves at all.
yeah, it's a different version of what we discussed with the Malkorians.
Yeah.
They had just questioned their entire identity as a culture and species in the universe.
Yeah. Because of a technological development as
Because of
opposed to biological development. Yeah.
This is the biological. I like when there's
Or trans-biological development, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it's... I love it when those things come together. Because there's so many different ways of
Me too.
approaching these questions. And they kind of filigree out a little differently,
I love when they just do technological but do it biological instead in sci-fi and
Sure.
fantasy. Like, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the awesome orchids from Picard.
Oh,
I would be
yes!
betraying myself and the spirit of Boothby.
Oh my god, that is one of my favorite things I've seen in years.
They are amazing. I would grow space flowers. Okay, Dave, man, we've discussed how I might be a little nervous breaking orbit with you at some point here.
Yeah.
If I can grow a spaceship flower, I will ride that flower to space, and I will see you there. Or you can come with me.
Wouldn't that be incredible? I wonder if that's where things like Tin Man didn't come from. He's a sort of space seed or something, those orchids were just like... That was, I think, probably the third or fourth time I wept in that, watching that series. But when that happened, I was
Watching
just like,
that episode.
this is just the best thing.
Yeah. They were great.
Yeah, that was a moment of really getting it. Because, there's everything is reached up from planets, from a big green hand in the original series to the weird weapons that came up on the weapons planet, Mora 4 or whatever it's called. The Merchant of Death, whatever the episode name is, TNG episode.
Okay.
The weapons that continuously upgrade themselves.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. There are things that just, that kind of leap out at you saying, this is really like a Trekkie thing. And those definitely were. They were really beautiful.
That's the planet I want to visit too, if I can.
Capelia Station, eh?
Where they do their technology through gardening. That's where I want to go develop my skills some more. Like, that's what I was trying to do. When I was like 12, I sent a message to the Canadian Space Agency. I forget what they were called at the time. They might not have been called, they might have been tied in with Arrow or something still, at least in name. But I sent them a letter and asked them how I could be a space botanist. I was watching TNG at the time, and that's when I was first getting into it. And I still love Keiko O'Brien.
Oh,
She gets
yeah.
a bad rap sometimes. I love Keiko, and I just want her job. She's a great character.
Oh, Keiko is like one of the realest characters. In the
She
whole series.
is, and she's such a good actress. She just
Yeah.
nails that character.
I love it, and she like brooks no shit from Miles O'Brien.
No, it's great.
Love it.
Honey, I'm not a fish. She's like, well, it's healthy. What's your problem? She's like, you could use a little healthy, O'Brien.
Exactly. Darts and pints at Quartz.
Yeah, I know. You know
man.
you're sneaking those darts off camera, O'Brien.
Oh man.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I would visit that planet and see what other technologies they developed through planting a seed in the ground.
Yeah.
I would like to see if our own technologies and developments in that field. See where that goes.
Oh,
what
man,
can we
yeah.
start to grow?
Yeah. Just grow a photosynthetic spaceship, right? It'd be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Well, I think we could get to our review
Oh yeah.
section of the show,
Yeah.
perhaps.
And this fits in with biology really beautifully. in
Yeah,
the
I think
story.
we kind of covered things pretty well for a
Indeed.
initial
From stem to
biology
stern.
episode.
Maybe as more in details on specific things and that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Gorn Crisis.
Yes, another comic book review.
This was
for
4
you,
issues,
dear
2
listeners.
issues. What was it?
It's a single trade, is what I have it in.
Okay.
Hardcover trade. It's from some time ago. It's not a new thing, so I guess we shouldn't feel too bad about spoilers, but we left it for the end anyway. And it came out from Wildstorm Comics back in 2001.
Wow.
And it takes place during the Dominion War. It's funny how a lot of the comics and stuff, that seems to be a favorite
Oh,
for
yeah.
writers to. Well, it was also during the heyday too, so there was probably
For
a lot
sure.
of media being
Well,
produced.
there's so. I mean, the war itself is clearly so huge. There's just. It seems like there's a
far
lot of
reaching.
storytelling room there. You know.
The Enterprise is orbiting Gorn, the Gorn homeworld. They're there for diplomatic reasons. They want to encourage the Gorn to help them in the battle for the Alpha Quadrant, essentially.
Yeah.
They need allies wherever they can find them. It's like,
Yeah.
you can talk to the Gorn, right, Jean-Luc?
Yeah. And they haven't heard from them in a while.
No, they haven't heard from them pretty much since Kirk's day.
Yeah.
They took that loss badly.
Yeah.
It's seemingly as a culture, which comes up in this story.
And so the other thing to note right from the beginning is that Commander Riker is off the Enterprise for the moment. He's
Right.
helping a bunch of Klingon outpost pioneers set up some defenses and get themselves set up as sort of a colony place.
Begrudging pioneers, perhaps. They
Yes.
are a group of Klingon warriors who've been shamed into now
Yes.
doing repairs during a war instead of fighting glorious battles.
Yeah, they followed their bloodlust too quickly. In one moment, a sort of false vision
Yes, the captain thought he had a vision
in
that
a dream.
battle they were going to fight was in fact going to be in a different location. And he would get there by himself and have all the glory for himself and his crew.
Yep. Didn't turn out that way.
Said maybe too much blood wine,
Yeah.
not a vision. They're similar.
Well, my experiences with blood wine would bear that out. So they're looking.
It only
for,
comes in the barrel full, and you can't
That's
waste
right.
it.
It goes off so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're looking for some way to reclaim their sense of being Klingon. I
Yeah.
think just as there are some Gorn who are
Oh,
looking
yeah,
to reclaim
I
their sense
didn't-
of being Gorn.
Draw that parallel, but
The
very
Black
nice. It's a great
Crest
story.
Clan, who appear to have been a highly militant segment of Gorn society.
Yeah, the Black Crest.
And they perpetrate a pretty foul treachery.
Yeah, they're in stern opposition to the royal family class of
Yep.
Gorn society, which seems to be a long generational.
Oh yeah, very
Kind of-
hierarchical society. It's very
Yeah.
ordered.
Seems like that royal family's been ruling things since Kirk's day,
At least since then.
and
Yep.
they haven't seen a lot of progress. The Black Crest in their mind.
No, and they feel that the Gorn are becoming weak.
Yes, lost their way. And, like, they see themselves more as the Klingons do during and before the Dominion Wars, as an expansionist culture. When they go somewhere, they're Gorn, they're Klingons. It's their destiny to take that world.
Yeah, and they want to claim that heritage for themselves. In so doing,
The weak must be conquered, they say.
Yeah.
As if that is a long standing
It's just a sort of
phrase
maxim
in their
of Gorn
society. Yeah. The weak must be conquered.
And so they decide to do that.
But they're
And
surrounded and they're stuck in their territory.
Yes. Yeah. On one side by the Federation, on one side by the Klingons. Behind
They're
them,
stuck.
who knows what's there. Yeah.
And not far from the Romulans.
Not
above
too far,
that
no.
even.
No.
Nowhere to go.
So these Black Crest Gorn massacre the government, the ruling council,
Yeah.
essentially. Moments before the Enterprise away team are to beam down.
And destroy the next generation of the ruling class, which is in an egg cache.
Yes.
And they stomp all the eggs. They destroy the next generation of the ruling council as well. So it's done. We've destroyed it now and for the future.
Yep. They mean to change Gorn society permanently.
Now, there was one survivor of the massacre who then calls Picard, who wasn't down on the planet because the Gorn leadership wouldn't meet with them in person. We let you come and talk to us, but we're not going to stand there and talk to you.
Yeah, they had received essentially kind of silence for the most part from them.
Yeah.
They're finally invited down. They arrive to this scene of, bloody massacre, and
but-
realize very quickly that the Black Crest are not very far away from this room. You know?
And they're told by a dying Gorn that there is a secret egg cache that did survive. So there is a potential next generation of the ruling class.
Yeah.
Who, as the legitimate government, Picard would feel obligated to defend, as they tend to do with the legitimate ruling class, even if they don't agree with the politics or the situations on the planets.
Yeah.
It's like when they get sick of that, they'll change their world.
And having been invited in, that's a different scenario than a sort of prime directive question here, right? This is a warp flight capable species who are asking for diplomatic and
the
other
ruling council on the
assistance.
planet asks for assistance. Yeah, exactly.
And so, they get to work trying to figure out how to save this next generation of Gorn rulers, while the Black Crest launch every ship they've got.
At Federation outposts.
Cestus 3, which was the site of their earlier attack on Federation space.
They appear to have the majority of the Gorn space fleet.
They appear to, and they're attacking there, and they're coming toward the outpost where Riker is...
Which is just on the edge of Gorn space.
Gaining the respect and the trust of the Klingons through Batleth fights.
Yep, he's fighting Klingon who keeps mouthing off to the captain, who Riker has talked to quite a bit, and despite his own professed shame, Riker seems to quite like the guy.
Yeah.
Seems a thoughtful leader. Thought he was doing right by his crew, was wrong. Now wants nothing more than to redeem himself.
Precisely.
And his crew.
And so the Gorn are on their way. And mean harm to everyone nearby. And at the same moment, Data, who's been left on the Enterprise to command, receives a
I love
help
Data
call.
Command episodes / stories.
Oh man, so good.
When he captains the Sutherland with a lot of my favorite Data moments.
Oh yeah, thought that was wonderful. Yeah. Picard just keeps hailing him and hailing
Mr.
him
Data.
and hailing him. Hello.
Yes. 1 minute, Captain.
Stand by.
Data's a great commander, and I love his quiet deliberation when it comes to issues. And you get his thoughts.
And he's really
in that
observed
moment.
Picard very carefully as a captain. There's a lovely moment in this where he remarks that
With him and Geordi.
Yeah,
Geordi
Captain
says,
Picard would have thought of a way
Yeah.
to kind of cut through this situation.
Yes. He tells Geordi he's stuck in a situation where he has to choose between rescue the captain or attack the Gorn, essentially.
Yeah, and help all those outposts. Yeah.
And Geordi's just said, well, what would Captain Picard do? Captain Picard would find a way to get an immediate ceasefire. He's like, he wouldn't choose either of those things. He would find a ceasefire and end them both in one kind of fell swoop. Kind of thing.
Yes.
It's like, so I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I'm trying to do the Picard thing, Geordi. Thank you.
Yeah. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah, I'm working on the Picard thing.
And beautifully, at the moment where Picard and all of his crew are about to be executed by the leader of the
Black Crest have stormed the where the landing party was, stormed the castle throne room, I guess, or council chambers or whatever it was. And they have a huge blade to Picard's neck, and he's telling Data he's gonna kill Jean-Luc right there. And Data has to make the decision, and Data's just quietly staring, and he's just like, I think you're bluffing. Basically, he's just like calls his bluff, essentially.
He says, "You say humans are weak.
Oh,
Am
yeah.
I not a product
Oh
of human
yes,
ingenuity?"
that's what it is. He's like,
and
you're
strength.
weak, and that's why I'll kill your captain, and then I'll come and get you. And he's just like, that's right. I see a fatal flaw and basically a lack of information
Yeah.
in that summation of yours.
Yeah. He says, "There's only one way to sort this out."
Yeah. Yep. And he beams down to the planet.
Yeah, yeah. And it, you know, in being Picard, Data in that moment is also James Kirk,
Yeah.
which is oh man, I loved it. Even gets the cut on the front of his uniform and everything.
Yep. Yeah. It's true.
And he defeats the leader of the
Yeah,
Black
he's
Crest.
just like,
as-
if I'm weak, because they it's a bit of a trick here. They don't know he's an android. They just think he's another. Think the Gorns are all the same. They're all just like humans or
Humans all
or
look the same
whatever.
to me.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like, fine, I will challenge you then. And since I'm weak, the Federation is weak. Mm-hmm. He's just because in his mind he's just like, I don't know if he thought this or says it to the Gorn. He's just like, the situation you see your society in compared to ours is because of our strengths. They may not be what you see as strength, but the strength of the Federation is why we're doing a little bit better than you are right now.
Right.
He's just like, so maybe you should not have such a basic view of strength and see how you're wrong here, because I'm about to make a fool of you.
Yeah.
It's kind of what Data's.
Yeah. And Data very handily puts him on the ground,
Yep.
which forces an immediate ceasefire. He recognizes that he's been bested in combat, and they relinquish control of Gorn society.
Yep. And Riker gets to have a cool fight with the Klingons.
Also true.
They fight the Gorn invasion force on that outpost. He earns the respect of.
The Klingons are able
Klingons.
to be warriors once more.
The captain sacrifices himself to save them, so he got a glorious death. He
Stovokor.
was Stovokor awaits.
Indeed. So yeah, I thought it was a really tight story.
Written by Kevin J. Anderson and Rebecca Moesta, and painted, as it's all painting,
Oh, beautiful art.
by Igor Corday.
Yeah, I thought they captured Data's features particularly well.
It made it a pleasure to look through. It was
Oh, absolutely.
pretty gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a really lovely work. And would honestly have made a very interesting episode of TNG.
Yeah. Which, much like the last review we did, it's like we're finding some stories that would have been great episodes and would have given us a glimpse into the Gorn that we never got to see.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Gorn are a fascinating species, you know.
Just being stuck there. They're just there, stuck between the Klingons and the Federation, and being the kind of species they are. It's
Yeah.
This moment was eventually going to come in some form.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah, they were going to try another crack at it, you know. Because the Gorn themselves, being literally kind of hot climate creatures, they are very interested in sort of claiming a thing and holding it, it seems. Yeah, I can see Gorn's really loving Vulcan. It's just so hot. There are rocks everywhere. I can lie down and just, it'd be great. But, yeah, that sense of strength, which was never really resolved in the original episode, which Kirk essentially sort of comments on, right? That this contest of strength isn't going to solve anything, really. And in that sense, he's right. It's just postponed things.
On a sour note as well.
Yeah, certainly for the Gorn. But yeah, I do love that sort of full circle sense that, you know, what started as a fist fight, neither of them really wanted, ends up essentially in a ritual combat that is really appropriately Gorn that they can both choose. You know, and Data is very Starfleet in choosing, let's do it your way. You know.
Plus, I'm going to win this.
he may well have calculated the tensile strength in that Gorn's arm already.
I think so, yeah.
He's like, I'm pretty sure I can do this.
So, Dave, recommend or yay or nay? The Gorn Crisis.
I would give this 3 Edoan thumbs up.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Indeed.
That's all of their thumbs.
I know. It's more thumbs than I have.
Good. I agree. 3 Edoan thumbs.
3 Edoan thumbs.
Yep.
All right.
Good story. It was nice to see some more development of the Gorn.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought
Beautiful
it was great.
Buff Riker.
Very, very buff Riker.
Riker was working out
Oh man,
with those Klingons.
Those Klingons put him through his paces.
They did. So I guess this episode sort of come full circle.
I think so. We've
You
we've taken a look at body plans and body styles and the life that emanates from them.
and as spring approaches, we can all plant our space seeds.
Indeed, and hope for orchids. End transmission. Should we even be here?
Well, look, how can we practice for Vix if we don't practice at Vix?
I'm an atmosphere and all. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
So it's fake it till you make it, right?
Practice for the gig at hand, yeah.
Right. All right. Well,
Okay.
that's all right. You said you had something you were working
Yeah,
on.
those
right?
chords I sent you.
Yeah. All right.
Let's try.
So from C minor. Here we go.
C minor, yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Gonna walk that promenade, yeah, we're gonna rock that promenade, be the talk of that promenade, looking for a star drifter, not a shapeshifter, lots to do and more to see, sweet sticks from a jumbo tree, oh, oddities, opportunities, free advice, but not for cheapo gambling wheels, shaded deals, meet me back here tomorrow, please. Walk that promenade, yeah, we're gonna rock that promenade, be the talk of that promenade, looking for a star drifter, not a shapeshifter, be anything you want to be, a bold sailor on a starry sea, warrior or ambassador, an enigma or a mystery, oh, just two more breach your warp core, and a saurian branded knee.
Let's get out of here.